Ladies and gentlemen, we may experience some turbulence ahead. Please fasten your seatbelts.
Imagine the scene. 30,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean, a silver jet cut through the night. The cabin was wrapped in an almost sacred hush, lit only by faint overhead bulbs and the occasional glow of reading lights. Most passengers were asleep, their heads pressed against windows or resting on strangers' shoulders. A few flight attendants moved quietly down the aisles, balancing trays of water and offering soft smiles, trying not to disturb the fragile stillness. It was the kind of peaceful moment that made you forget you were hurtling through the sky in a machine of metal and fuel. Then the intercom crackled. The captain's voice came through. But it was not the calm, practiced tone everyone expected. His words trembled, as if pulled from the throat of a man staring into the face of something he could not control. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. If there are any combat pilots on board, please come forward immediately. At first, the words didn't register. People blinked, shifted in their seats, waiting for the punchline. But the silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Confusion spread like fire across dry grass. Heads turned. Eyes darted from row to row, searching for someone to stand up. Whispered questions rippled through the cabin. What did he mean, combat pilots? Why would a passenger plane need one? In row 10, a woman stirred. She pulled her headphones down, her book sliding forgotten into her lap. Her name was Alina Carter. She was 29 years old, dressed like any ordinary travel-faded jeans, worn hoodie, hair tied in a loose knot. No one on that plane knew her story. No one knew that 2 years earlier she had been one of the Air Force's best fighter pilots, flying F-16S at the edge of the stratosphere. Battling physics and enemy fire with the same calm she now wore like armor, she had walked away from it all after a mission went wrong. A mission that left scars deeper than any the eye could see. Alina had boarded this flight not to be noticed, but to disappear. She wanted distance from her past, from the ghosts that followed her into every dream. For her, this was supposed to be a simple trip, a chance to rest, to hide in plain sight among strangers. She had no intention of stepping into anyone's story but her own. But the captain's call shook her awake in a way no turbulence ever could. Combat pilots. That phrase was not a mistake. Something was wrong. Something big enough to strip the polish off of professional captains. Voice and leave behind raw fear. Her body acted before her mind caught up. She unbuckled her seatbelt slowly, her hands steady though her heart hammered in her chest. She thought of the last mission, of the squadron that didn't make it home, of the promises she had whispered to herself in the aftermath. I'm done. No more skies. No more risks. No more heroics. Yet as the captain's plea echoed through her skull, she knew the truth. When lives were at stake, she had never been able to look away. Alina rose. Passengers turned, their whispers sharpening. Who was this woman? Where was she going? She ignored the stares, her jaw set. Her steps deliberate as she walked the long aisle toward the cockpit. The moment she entered, the sight was worse than she imagined. The captain's uniform clung to him, soaked with sweat. His face was pale, lips pressed thin, his hands trembling on the controls. Beside him, the co-pilot slumped in his seat, unconscious, oxygen mask hanging uselessly. Warning alarms blared from the dashboard, shrill and merciless. Red lights pulsed across the panels like the heartbeat of a dying beast. Outside, the storm raged, black clouds torn open by jagged veins of lightning. The plane rocked under invisible fists of turbulence. The captain's eyes widened when he saw her. He barely managed to speak over the chaos of alarms. Autopilot's gone. Controls damaged. My co-pilot's out. If I go too, this plane won't last. In that instant, Alina didn't hesitate. Training long buried but never forgotten surged back. She slid into the co-pilot's seat, scanning the instruments, her fingers gliding over unfamiliar switches like greeting an old friend. Commercial jets weren't fighters, but flight was flight. And she had lived long enough inside cockpits to know the language of machines under duress. I can fly this, she said. Voice firm, steady. The captain blinked. as if unsure whether to believe her. "Who are you?" She met his gaze without flinching. "Call sign Viper? United States Air Force? Retired? I'm your co-pilot now." And with that, she wrapped her hands around the yoke. The storm clawed at the aircraft. Lightning strobes illuminating terrified faces in the cabin. Oxygen masks dropped like pale ghosts, dangling above the passengers. Screams rose, prayers were whispered, chaos spread, but inside Elena's mind, the noise faded. She had flown through missile barrages, dodged enemy fighters in skies that were nothing but fire and smoke. Compared to those battles, this storm was simply another adversary to outmaneuver. She called out systems reports, like she had once done with her squadron. "Left engine fluctuating." "Adjusting power," the captain replied, his voice thin. "Hydraulics failing." Elena tightened her grip. "Then we fly it like a wounded bird." Every second was a fight. The jet lurched violently, tossed by invisible hands. She adjusted angles with razor precision. Too sharp, and the wings could tear apart. Too soft, and they would drop altitude faster than gravity could forgive. Sweat ran into her eyes, but her breathing was calm. Her mind focused on the rhythm of survival. In the cabin, fear had reached its peak. Strangers clung to each other as if their grip alone could keep the aircraft aloft. A little girl, clutching her teddy bear, looked up at her mother with wide eyes and whispered, "Is she an angel?" The mother, tears streaming, nodded, unable to find words. Minutes stretched into hours. Every movement of Elena's arms felt heavier, her muscles burning, nerves screaming, but she didn't falter. Somewhere through the storm, faint but undeniable, she saw it lights piercing the rain. A strip of salvation. The emergency runway of a coastal airbase, her voice cut through the static of the radio, clear and unwavering. "This is Delta 473. Former USAF pilot at the controls. Request emergency landing." For a breathless second, only static replied. Then came the calm voice of an air traffic controller. "Copy that, Viper. You're clear to land. We're with you." The runway rushed closer, but the storm refused to surrender. Crosswinds slammed the jet sideways, forcing Elena to fight for every inch of alignment. Passengers cried, prayed, promised God anything for a safe landing. Elena blocked it all out. Her universe narrowed to three things: the yoke in her hands, the stretch of asphalt ahead, and the steady thrum of her heartbeat. "Steady," she whispered. Steady, the wheels struck asphalt with a violent screech. The plane bounced once, then again, threatening to veer before slamming down hard. Elena roared against the controls, forcing reverse thrust, muscles screaming as she battled to keep the beast straight. Then, at last, the jet slowed, rolling to a stop against the curtain of rain. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the cabin erupted. Cheers, sobs, applause crashing together in a tidal wave of human relief. Passengers hugged strangers. Hands reached out, clapping, thanking God, thanking luck, thanking the nameless woman who had carried them through the storm. Elena peeled off the headset, her hands trembling, her breath ragged. The captain turned to her, tears brimming in his eyes. "You just saved 300 souls." But Elena shook her head, her voice soft. "No, they saved me." For years she had lived under the shadow of failure, haunted by the comrades she could not bring home. She had believed she no longer deserved the sky, that her wings had been clipped forever. But in that cockpit, with the weight of hundreds of lives in her hands, she had found something she thought was lost purpose. When she stepped back into the cabin, the passengers rose as one, clapping, crying. Some reaching to brush her sleeve as if to confirm she was real. The little girl ran down the aisle, wrapping her arms around Elena's leg. "Thank you, Angel," she whispered. Elena smiled through her tears. For the first time in years, she felt whole. She had not asked for recognition or medals or fame. She had asked only for peace. And somehow, by saving others, she had found it. Life is unpredictable. Sometimes the person you least expect holds the strength to save everyone. Roten would never be forgotten, because that was where an angel had been sleeping, waiting for the call. And somewhere above the Atlantic, in the aftermath of storm and fear. 300 people learned that